I'm Larry Froelich, and I'm the editor of the Journal of Sustainability Education, and I'm really the instigator for, I think, getting everybody who's in this room here, at least initially. Last fall, in a period of about a week, I saw both of these gentlemen talk in very different settings, in both cases about sustainability of their institutions, and I was fascinated by how they used some of these very similar words, and yet clearly in a context that was so different for Dr. Jim Horton, who's the president of Yavapai College, and for Dr. Dan Garvey, who's the president of Prescott College, just because of the nature of the institutions. And so I proposed to them, really very little arm twisting involved, that we do a joint interview and see what comes out of it, because I could think of nothing better than getting two such bright people in the room and getting them to try and help us think about these problems. And then it occurred to me that we really have a couple of experts locally who are far better suited than me to put questions to them, and that's Pramat Parajuli, who is faculty here in the graduate program related to sustainability, and Jordana Dejou, who is a student in the PhD program in sustainability education and also faculty here at the college in the RDP program. So they're going to ask the questions. I hope that, you know, as much as I put forth a few topics that I think would be of interest to all of us, that what we're going to find out, you know, is what it's like to be presidents of these institutions and to be facing the problems that we're facing in today's world right at this moment, and ways in which we can, I think, be positive about it and put together an idea of how the institutions and how our educational process can be sustainable. So without any further ado, I think Jordana's going to ask
the first question. Well, thank you both for joining us today, and thank you all for being here. It's really great to have folks come to hear our two presidents talk and share their ideas. So the first topic is, what is sustainability anyway? The word sustainability has become a mainstay of our academic discourse, certainly in terms of the media. We hear it thrown around a lot, and even many folks are now working it into their dinner conversations. But what is the meaningful concept behind the word sustainability? And how do each of you understand the concept personally as well as in terms of your academic institutions? And what aspect of sustainability, or perhaps even real programs, do you think you share between the colleges? And we'll start with Dr. Horton.
Oh, goodness. How many questions are in that question? It's really ironic because I recycle my folders. And I don't know if this was some kind of unconscious thing or conscious, but I picked up one that says 2006 legislature. And that was back when Arizona actually had some money. Right now they're looking at a $5 billion shortfall over the next 18 months, so it's kind of interesting. You know, the whole issue of sustainability is so interesting. It's probably the oldest topic discussed by mankind. You can see the Australopithecines, if their language was developed that much, or Neanderthals or whatever, sitting around the fire figuring out how they were going to sustain their family, their life. You know, it has been with us since throughout human history. So it's always been an issue. And what makes today's world so much more difficult is the complexity, whether that's brought about by the tremendous population that we have, you know, and the population growth that we have. Because one of the things I'm really interested in, it's one of the many weird things I'm interested in, is exponential curves. Because, you know, when you keep adding elements to the mix, you're on an exponential curve, and everything gets much more complex. So that's what I'm looking at from a sustainability standpoint, is the complexity we're dealing with across this world right now, and how do you deal with that, because there are so many potential interactions that are just impossible. You know, ASU has a focus on sustainability, and they base it on the interaction of several things: the economy, the environment, you know, the social environment, and so forth, all of which have to be maintained as sustainable. You can't have one without the other. And many of the ideas thrown about, you know, you find immediate conflict then with some of those other elements. Our social systems, our legal systems, et cetera, are often not geared to meet these needs. And I'm going to throw in another circle because it's really what I'm interested in, and that is sustainability of technological innovation. Because I think that our only hope, really, is through technological innovation. Malthus, you remember back in the 1800s, wrote about, Thomas Robert Malthus, about the population was going to quickly outstrip the agricultural ability of the country to maintain its population. And what Malthus didn't see coming, of course, was the Industrial Revolution, which totally, changed the whole environment. Today, I think, and I remember E.F. Schumacher's book, too, and Small is Beautiful. Any of you ever read that book? Mm-hmm. I liked it, but my problem, in fact, Yavapai College is the smallest college I've had in a long time, is scalability. How do you take ideas that work in a small environment, and how do you scale them up to work in mega environments? And most of my career has been in big cities and big city systems and so forth. And it can only be, I think there's some way we can put those ideas together, that small is beautiful kind of thing, but with technological innovation. I think our only hope for feeding the world has to come from transgenic plants, that are much more productive. It has to do with new forms of energy, which may even include more nuclear energy. I thought I might as well start getting controversial right off here, And another thing about, the exponential curves I'm talking about is another weird area of interest that I have has to do with fear. People often have very irrational fears about things, and get all upset about the possibility of danger coming from this or that. When we readily accept 40, 50,000 people dying a year in our highways, 250,000 permanently maimed, and we make no big deal out of it. We just go, and yet we get just really bent out of shape about the possibility with much lower probabilities of other kinds of things happening. That's just another one of my weird interest areas. But to me, sustainability is, and I as a teacher, I need to have a chalkboard up here because I need to draw those circles. It's at that intersect, how do we balance all those things out? And one of the circles that I'm adding is technological innovation, because I think our only hope for survival, and I think it can be combined with both smaller environments and it can be scalable, but that's our challenge that we have.
Dr. Garvey, the same question for you.
Okay. Well, first, let me thank Jim for being here. I appreciate it. And thank all of you for being here as well, even if it was required. We still appreciate it. And thank you. So, sustainability, for me, I'm sure that we're going to do this. I'm sure that as each one of us utters something, the other one will try to supplement and complement it. So I feel that great resonance with a lot of what Jim said. But sustainability for me is more closely connected to right thinking. So what's the appropriate thinking that's necessary? I suspect that earlier in the progression of contemplating sustainability, I focused, as most of us do, on environmental sustainability or the sustainability of different institutions, whether that be the family or religion or whatever. Now I find that I'm more interested in looking at the thinking that exists within an accumulation of people, let's say a society. So as I look at it, I would put different markers at different points in the history of our species. Times when we were thinking very well, and times when we were not thinking very well. And I would say those times that we're not thinking very well are times when we're unsustainable. And that our job as a species is to move towards positive thinking. So we've got our heads around the important things that need to be done. I know I'm taking sort of an esoteric or a lofty swing at this question, but it really is how I come down on it. So for me, the question of sustainability is, what is a society, how are they constructing the thought processes to handle what's going on? I believe that at every point in history, the people that are thinking during that period believe in their hearts that they're thinking as in the most advanced way that anyone else has ever thought. Nobody else could think deeper than we're thinking right now. And we're in that place at this moment. We believe that we can capture the essence of what's going on. But if, to use some historical perspective, when Descartes said cogito ergo sum, he said, I think, therefore I am. That was a major demarcation. What he was saying was that we don't need priests or scientists or college presidents to tell us what to think, that we're capable of thinking if we put in the time ourselves. He didn't say cogito ergo est, which would mean I think, therefore it is. And that's where we are right now as a society. We've come to the place where we believe that if we have thought about something and we've come to a conclusion, then therefore that is the way it is. So if we believe that there is global warming, then we think about it and therefore it is. And if we don't believe there's global warming, we've thought about it and we've concluded that it doesn't exist. So my hope is that we're in a transitional period, that we're on the threshold of a renaissance, and that the signal for that will be that we will gravitate towards more reliance on truth as opposed to opinion. So I would say that affects every institution that I get a chance to bump into, including Prescott College. How do you make right thinking in this institution when it's so easy to make decisions based on personal belief systems, including mine? So that's, and I know it's not down and dirty, but when I think of sustainability, I think of the big issue of how do we create an environment where people can think. And apropos, if I could just tag on to this, apropos to our work, there couldn't be anything more important in my mind than creating an institution or helping to shepherd an institution that is dedicated to having people learn to think. But for that, we have no chance for evolution because it will simply devolve into people's personal opinion. And most of us, I would assume, feel that already. You're either a CNN person or you're a Fox person or you're an NPR person.
I want to ask, Barry, you might answer it shortly. What is it that we are trying to sustain? Is it the existing world that we love so much and we are so proud that we are afraid it will go away and we want to sustain it? Or that we have a vision of a different society which will become sustainable? There is a lot of debate about that.
Well, I mean, we have to change our society. And I agree with what Dan's saying about changing the way people think. It's much more difficult to change the way people behave. And that is our challenge. I mean, there's no question in my mind that we cannot sustain this country as we currently are. I mean, we're one of the worst polluters in the world. And, and we use an inordinate amount of the world's resources to sustain our lifestyle. So this country particularly has to change. But while I agree with what Dan's saying about changing the way people think, changing the way people behave is quite another issue.
And I would say the sustainability question, what ought to be sustained, is probably has as much to do with how someone sees their own place in the world as anything else. So, for instance, these are personal comments that we're making. When I think of sustainability, I think of sustainability for the next generation. I'm not interested in maintaining or sustaining my stuff, whatever it is. That's not where, but I would say that in conversations with many people, I'm not surprised, and I'm not surprised that it seems to be that most people, I'm not holding myself out as the, paragon of, group consciousness, but it seems to me that most people are interested in sustaining their own thing. When I think of it, I'm thinking of, we have a moral obligation to move this thing along for those that are coming along behind us. It seems unconscionable to me to allow sustainability to reside in one person or one generation.
Realize how unpopular what we're just saying will be with the majority of people in this country?
I
That's right.
sometimes think, yes, that's right, yes. So let us,
Thank you.
let's move to the economic aspect of sustainability. For a stable institution like a college, economic viability must inevitably enter into thinking about long-term sustainability. Right now, each of your colleges, like colleges nationwide, is facing especially pressing financial challenges. Do you think economic concerns must take precedence? Or can the financial realities ever take second stage to a call for diminishing the environmental footprint that a large educational institution inevitably leaves?
Well, first of all, the question implies a dichotomy.
Yes.
And I don't accept that dichotomy. I would say that financial viability or sustainability is necessary. Rather than it being a challenge, it's an opportunity for an institution to have right thinking, as it is for an individual. I mean, institutions are no different. They're just collections of individuals. I'm not so sure that having no financial regard is good for an individual. In fact, I would say just the opposite. I would say that without any tether to the reality of finances, it would be very easy to have a life that was absolutely meaningless. And the same thing is true for institutions, and I'm sure Jim and I can list for you.
Yeah.
We wouldn't, because it's being taped.
That's right.
But we know lots of institutions that are flush, and their contribution has been minimized because there is no connection to the bottom line in any way. So first I would say I don't accept that as a necessary dichotomy. But I would say that every decision that is made in our institution, and I'm sure it's true for Jim's, is an institution that recognizes that there are multiple needs that are arriving at an intersection at exactly the same time. And it's always a question of sorting, and it's always a question of trying to put the priorities of the institution. My hope is that we have enough of plurality of voices so that we understand how people would place these priorities. Let me give you one perfect example. This is a real ethical question, and Jordana will understand because she teaches this. This is a question of two rights. What's the best of two rights? Is it right that people make a decent wage? Absolutely. Is it right that we do all that we can to be sustainable? Absolutely. Is it right that we do everything that we can to be handicapped accessible? Yes. Okay? Pick one of those, and the other two will be diminished as a result. If we want to make this place completely accessible, handicapped accessible, which it isn't, in case you haven't noticed, we can do that, and I can guarantee that that will have something to do with our salaries. It will also have something to do with the amount of money that would be available to do sustainability projects as we've been talking about. So it's always a question of sorting, and the reality is sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't. And the best you can hope for is that you're trying to stay true to your mission and accommodate as much as you possibly can.
Ditto. One of the things that I like about Eastern philosophy is that they can deal with the simultaneous existence of opposites, which we don't deal with very well in Western society. And I absolutely agree with Dan that these are not mutually exclusive kinds of issues. But when you get to the real world on a day-to-day basis, then actually what he and I are paid for, with our staff and so forth, is making those kind of priority decisions. And I am often frustrated because I'm not able to do what I know needs to be done, because it does ultimately detract from our core mission. And there's no place where that is more clear than in our use of energy and water and so forth. Now, we're trying as fast as we can to, xeriscape all the landscape, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're lucky enough to be in Prescott where, one of the simple things I can do is bring in outside air because the outside air is not too bad here. And the temperature is easier to control. But I need at least a $12 million investment in my physical plant to get us more energy efficient and not being wasting the tremendous amount of water we're wasting right now in our cooling towers. So I am often frustrated because I know what needs to be done, and I've seen some of the things that you've done around here, and you've made some real advances. And there are lots of things that we need to do, but they require huge capital investments. And I find that very frustrating. We're paying an architect right now to redesign our whole central heating and cooling system using the latest technologies, but I'm going to get through the design phase, and that's all I got money for. But at least if money ever comes back, I'll be ready to roll with a physical plant that will make a tremendous difference in energy usage. But that's what Dan and I are paid to do on a day-to-day basis, obviously with the advice of our staff, and we have shared governance with our faculty, so we involve our faculty too. But it really is frustrating. I mean, we often know what we need to be doing, but can't do it because, it absolutely will detract from other pieces of your core mission.
Okay, topic 3, and this is a little unfair because I'm going to diverge a little bit from the script that the presidents have. So
we won't follow it anyway, so it doesn't make any difference.
And I'm going to include the original framing. This third topic is about social justice, the social justice ramifications of sustainability. And so part of the original question was looking at the economics and how that plays out around social justice issues, particularly when we look at the fact that only 1% of the world's population attends college. And certainly it's beyond the scope of the missions of your two institutions to take responsibility for the 99% of the world's population that don't attend. That said, because that 1% is generally fairly wealthy and has the socioeconomic privilege to attend college, part of my question is around how you view that as a social justice issue here in Prescott in terms of students who have access to the educations at your institutions, but also in terms of that other issues of social justice and the populations, the demographics you serve.
Okay. First of all, I have to tell you, just living in Prescott's a shock to me. This is the least diverse community I've ever lived in my life. I've lived in large cities and often in areas where I was even in the minority, and of course, and I've lived overseas where, I was certainly in the minority. So this is a very different environment here for me, and one that, when you talk about social justice and so forth, you're often talking about it, more academically and theoretically than you're on a day-to-day basis. However, we have people with many, many needs in this community, and I'm an old community college guy. I'm in my 28th year of being a president of a community college somewhere, and I believe, I'm almost a missionary and have that kind of zeal because I think community colleges really have been part of the realization of our nation's democratic ideals in opening up higher education to everybody. So I always try to keep my cost to the students as low as possible. We're working on things in textbooks and so forth. But let me speak to your bigger issue because I do think there is some interesting, hope, and we are all contributing to it because we are developing more and more online capability. I actually listened to an interview on NPR the other day, and just a regular kid really has become a very successful entrepreneur, didn't bother to go to college, and said, you really don't need to. Of course, MIT's got all their classes online for free. You can go on and audit their courses for free. You can't get the degree, but you can audit all of their courses. And increasingly, that's becoming the case. And when I've worked with, when I was overseas and I was working with colleagues even in India, more and more of that is becoming available at little to no cost. And the developing countries have skipped the industrial age. They have jumped directly from, to the latest wireless technologies, which are becoming increasingly affordable. And it's amazing when you go to a lot of these countries and you see everybody's walking around with a cell phone. So you realize that I think because of our technology, and I get back to technological innovation, and you guys are developing a lot of online stuff. 20% of our students are online now, and there's lots of open source stuff out there now that we can get fairly inexpensively. Now I can't economically survive if I make everything free, but students can access a lot of the stuff that we have if they don't need credit for it. They can access that information because it's there. So I think there is some real hope for a lot of the world's population from an educational standpoint, because from a technical standpoint, it is available, and they've just leapfrogged into the wireless age, over all other technologies.
The social justice issue is something we deal with all the time, and it shows up in virtually everything we do. One of the ways it shows up is in the pricing of tuition. And so for instance, irrespective of where you go to school, I remember when I went to college that I went to a state college, and they raised the tuition $25 a semester. And I was the president of student government, and I took the students out on strike for a $25 increase. So wherever you are, you feel that you're maxed out, and that it's really a question of whether this is a value. But the fact of the matter is, in a small institution like ours, if you were to take all of the private schools in the United States that were like ours in terms of our academic quality, we're in the bottom third in terms of our pricing. And we have to work really hard to keep it that way, which means we forego some things. Our commitment, I think, is our curriculum. That's the way I look at it. I remember a couple of years ago that I was up on the reservation. I know that when I think of Prescott College, I think of Prescott College in its totality. All of our students. I don't just think of our RDP students. I think of all of our students. The majority of the students that go to Prescott College do not reside in Prescott. They're all over the world. So I go up on the Navajo reservation, and I learned that the number one factor that contributes to high school graduation is whether or not a Navajo student has native teachers, because most of the teachers on the Navajo reservation are actually Anglos. Those students that have Navajo teachers seem to persist, and they have a higher percentage of graduation. I also learned that Prescott College has the majority of certified teachers on the Navajo reservation have their certification through Prescott College, despite the fact that it's almost contiguous with Northern, with Southern Colorado, with University of Arizona, New Mexico. So we have a tremendous impact in different places. But I would say that the social sustainability, the social justice issue is constantly brought up in this institution. And sometimes I worry, I think on a personal level, that we will never get it, we'll never succeed. And I just don't want people to be discouraged in their attempt at greatness. We will never be socially just. How could we be? I mean, what would that look like if we lived in a world where we all kind of went, well, I guess all these issues are done. Now, anyone interested in bowling? I mean, what are we going to do? So since we'll never be there, and we care so much about it in this community, I wonder whether we pay enough attention to the discouragement factor that could happen to some people who feel, well, it's not worth it anyway, I might as well go first class on the Titanic.
Yeah, now let's go to the actual commitment to sustainability and ecological principles in our colleges and institutions as a micro ecosystem. So let's kind of turn our attention to college as a microorganism, as an ecosystem itself. So here is the question. Each of your colleges is basically an entire mini city with housing, food service, vehicle transportation, great energy and water demands from a large number of teaching and service buildings, and a large digital infrastructure. What programs or initiatives or simple steps will make the operations of this mini city more sustainable over the long run, and what have you been able to do up to now? Let's just start with President Garvey.
Every president has a quiver of arrows that represent their skill sets, and I would like to say that my skill set is on sustainability, and it's not. I focus more on issues of social justice than I do on issues that are more closely defined as sustainability, which means, as with many, many areas in the college, I have to depend on other people to tell us how to move and in what direction and at what speed. So the best I can do is make sure that we're making opportunities for people such as yourself to come here, that we're setting up the kinds of committees that we need, that we're listening to those committees, that we're putting programs in place, and then get out of the way and just try to get the resources necessary. So this would be a perfect example. I'm not being overly modest, but my family's background in the building, area and things like that. I've done a lot of building. If I had to build Crossroads Center on my own, it wouldn't have been rammed earth. I didn't have the concept of how you would do that. I might have tried to do something, but it wouldn't have looked anything like this. So the fact that we are able to be successful is because there are lots of people who understand what's going on. I could list, and we can do this on the internet or something, all of the things that we're actually doing. And we do that for our trustees and things like that. But for our purposes, I'll just leave it. It's more of a commitment.
We're very interested in providing the kind of technical programs and scientific background and so forth that's necessary, we believe, to make a fundamental difference in our use of energy and the carbon footprint and so forth. One of the ironies is we have a building program that just won 2 national awards, including Builder of the Year, which colleges never do. Typically it's private contractors, because built virtually zero utility use Habitat for Humanity house. And yet I'm having difficulty sustaining that program economically because there are no students and I'm not getting any money from the state of Arizona. So, it's a bit of a dilemma. We've got an award-winning program that is essential to our ability to make this transition. And yet, I'm having a great difficulty in finding money to sustain that program. I'm headed off to Washington, D.C. Sunday again in my eternal quest for money. They can print it, so I'm going there, and have hired a lobbying firm to help me get over this crisis. On our own campus, I really mentioned this a while ago, we really have done a tremendous amount of automation, for one example. Things that aren't observable necessarily, but the whole system can be run off a laptop computer remotely from anywhere. And so you change variable air valves and so forth, and you bring in outside air instead of heating or cooling it. And lots of things that we've done within the budget that we have. But as I've said also, is that I know that we're not doing all the right things. There's no question in my mind, and I can give you a long list of the things that we should be doing. But all of those things require an upfront capital investment. And it may have a payback of 10 years or 15 years or whatever from a financial standpoint. But right now, I just can't do that because, I can't take on any more debt service. If I went out for a bond program, I'd be shot. And so we're at a real crossroads as far as, how much more can we do? I would go back, I think, to a lot of what Dan's talking about with right thinking, though. We need to get individuals at their office level, to not plug in a refrigerator or coffee pot and so forth. There are a lot of little things that we can do, and we're going to try to really emphasize those things. But I am just constantly frustrated because the things I really need to do that make a tremendous amount of difference all require major capital investments on my part.
So as you think about your institution 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line, what for you would be some of the aspects of moving towards greater sustainability in all systems at your institution, economically, socially, environmentally? What would the physical plant look like? What would the student demographics look like? What would your staff, faculty, and curricula look like?
The dream for the future is, again, I guess, that I just have to admit to being a bit of a techie. I've always been that way. I actually taught electronics at one point. I put myself through school teaching electronics for the Air Force and so forth. So I have a technical background. I also have a liberal arts degree. But I do look at what's happening with technology. And we've had a lot of discussions. Larry is really one of our stars, and I don't want to embarrass him here, but he really is. Faculty in our institution have taken on their own staff development, particularly as it includes including digital support for everything that we do. Really very sophisticated digital support. And Larry's really been a leader in that area. But our faculty have really taken this on their own. They do a summer and a winter institute, 3 days each time. They teach each other. They bring in people. And then we talk a lot about the new students we're getting. I mean, you look at the younger students and how they communicate, the social networks that they have, the electronic social networks. And we're looking at how that's going to impact higher education in the future. And it's definitely going to impact higher education. And I think our physical plants will become smaller. We're trying to combine the best of face-to-face with digital support. We even have classes, I guess on the Verdi we got chemistry and biology with a hybrid system. And students, because of the vast distances that we serve here, can do the didactic stuff online, and then they come in on the weekends or whatever and do some of their laboratory courses. So it is going to be different. And my dream is that, and this is so general, that we would somehow find out how to combine the best of this incredible technological revolution that's coming about. I guess I would have to just sum my dream up is that somehow we find that balance between all of that incredible technology that's coming and still the advantage of face-to-face, because I think that's where the wisdom comes from. Mm-hmm. You get wisdom, interacting with each other. You get knowledge. You can get knowledge off the computer. But the wisdom is what we need to impart in the classroom, I think.
I just want to dovetail on what Jim was saying. Last week we had the president of the University of Phoenix come in and meet with the President's Circle, which is my staff. And he was commenting, this is the largest institution in the world. They have over 500,000 students at the University of Phoenix. Small, intimate gathering, I'm sure. But he was saying that they're seeing a big increase in the number of people that are enrolling in the University of Phoenix, but actually trying to find a place where they can meet and come together. So, and when their N is so large that when they see a trend, it is a huge trend. So if they're seeing that people really want to get back together in a classroom, you can take that one sort of to the bank. My dream for the college is probably still connected to the mission. Quite frankly, I care a little bit that people get good jobs when they graduate from Prescott College, a little bit. But I really care that they use the information that they've been able to get here and the privilege, really, to make a change in the world around them. So that's much more a part of my vision of the future. So my dream is that Prescott College students and this community will continue to have an impact on pivotal questions that face all of us, vexing problems that have been very complex, that we will look around and we will see people who have been vaccinated by Prescott College doing all of this different stuff everywhere. And then it can be really kind of summed up in an image that I have. As many of you know, I have a background in mountaineering and that kind of stuff. And it would be true that if someone were involved in outdoor education and they had never bumped into Knowles or Outward Bound, you'd have to wonder whether they were serious about it. I guess my vision for Prescott College is if someone said that they were really involved in sustainability and social justice and they had never bumped into Prescott College, I'd have to wonder whether they were really serious about what they were doing. How could you do this and not have taken a course with us or showed up? So anyway, that's kind of a lofty dream, but it's the reason why we're here. I mean, we're not here really. We have different missions, and I would love to have the mission that Jim has some days. And I'm sure he feels the same way about our mission. But our mission is to try to move the needle. And we do that through the good work of our graduates and our larger community.
Wow, this has been really profoundly very reflective for me that I had never thought that the university presidents were people with such deep, and I thought they were just like, people there doing some job or, writing some memo. I'm just kidding. But today, I'm really happy to find that these are very capable people and they do things.
I'm not surprised.
You take this one.
And we are getting the best people.
My response is, the game that's played between faculty and presidents is faculty say our president is so stupid it's even recognized by other presidents. And presidents will say things, faculty hate Wednesday meetings because it screws up both weekends, and you can go on and on,
I think this is the best way to get to know the presidents is this kind of dialogue rather than
You may hear that when it goes.
meeting or something.
No, thank you all very much for coming. And I think,
Thank you, presidents.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.